And thank you, Adrian, for those opening comments. I'm delighted to introduce our next keynote. As Adrian touched upon, at the City UK, we've long argued the benefits of a stronger presence for the regulators across the UK. Currently, the FCA's only office outside London is in Scotland, and that is led by Maggie Craig, who has had a distinguished career in insurance before joining the FCA in 2017. I'm delighted to introduce her comments, which are provided from her unique perspective. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all today at the City UK National Conference. It's great to be able to speak to this diverse audience of senior industry leaders and stakeholders, all bringing your local and national perspectives from across the UK. I'm Maggie Craig, and I'm head of the Scotland office at the FCA in Edinburgh. I take a lead role in our approach to regional engagement, and I've been heavily involved in our national location strategy. I guess you all know that the majority of the FCA's 4,200 staff are based in Stratford, and that can sometimes lead people to consider us to be a bit London-centric. I'm going to talk to you today about how we are a regulator for the whole of the UK and the steps we're taking to reinforce and extend that reach. I'll also touch on some issues around diversity and innovation that are woven through our approach, as well as that most pressing of topics, climate change. Financial regulation has a long history in Scotland. For those of you old enough to remember, there's been an office in Edinburgh since the 1980s, and that has run through an impressive series of acronyms over the years, starting out as LOUTRO, Life Assurance and Unit Trust Regulatory Organisation, the PIA, Personal Investment Authority, then the FSA, Financial Services Authority, and finally the FCA, Financial Conduct Authority. So we've quite a history here. And as you might expect, there are particular nuances in Scotland. We are a country. We have our own parliament, our own legal framework, our own customer base, and sometimes a different approach. And while the physical regulatory presence has been here in Scotland for decades, it was only really when the decision was made to appoint a head of Scotland in 2017 that more nuanced and more customer engagement began in its widest sense, not only within the financial services community, but across the whole landscape. Political and government stakeholders, consumer bodies, the third sector, academia. I was lucky enough to take up the Head of Scotland role, and since then, my team's approach has aimed to maximise representation of the FCA in Scotland and ensure that the Scottish perspective is understood within the FCA itself. As you would expect, we work very closely with our colleagues in the FCA's public affairs and communications teams, but we hold that Scottish lens to the projects and work of the organisation. For example, we have a different legal framework north of the border, and there are significant differences, particularly in criminal and property law. And this can become important across a range of financial services matters. For example, take the live debate on whether crypto assets are actually legally property under Scots law. We have our own political landscape in Scotland, as I said, with the current party in power at Holyrood holding, I think it's fair to say, a rather different outlook from that of the Westminster government. And over the course of this pandemic, this has been thrown into the spotlight often in terms of the COVID response. For example, the Scottish Government had a different definition of key workers. Different restrictions have impacted how and when offices could reopen here. And the pandemic has really illustrated how devolved matters, such as health, can affect our work more broadly in ways that we might not have considered before. Take even the geography of the country. This affects our work and our approach to regulation. Consider the significant rural and island populations we have in Scotland and the impact this has on things like access to cash and bank branch closures. A branch closure might be inconvenient in central Scotland where there are multiple alternatives available. On the islands, it could mean an 80-mile ferry trip, I beg your pardon, with a ferry journey thrown in for good measure. It does matter. Scottish stakeholders right across the financial services community describe the FCA's work with my team in place as increasingly visible, more coordinated, better focused, and they believe that the organisation increasingly better understands and reflects distinct Scottish challenges. Our presence here is also seen as key in preventing a London-centric view of financial services, especially due to the increasing political disparities. Taking all that together, in his keynote speech launching the FCA business plan for 21-22, our CEO Nikhil Rathi said that as a national institution, the FCA should not only reach, but should also reflect the whole of the United Kingdom. And that signalled the start of our new strategy on national occasions, which I hope will make us even more representative of the communities we serve. Following the very successful approach we've implemented in Scotland, and recognising the importance of engagement with all the devolved administrations, Nikhil has announced that we will establish external affairs presence in both Belfast and Cardiff. This will make us more alive to local issues faced by policymakers and consumers in all the devolved nations, and that in turn makes us better able to reflect their needs in our policy and in our regulatory decision making. So this expansion will see my team change to become the FCA Devolved Nations team. I'm really looking forward to learning more about both Wales and Northern Ireland and making sure their distinct perspectives are represented within the FCA, just as we've done in Scotland. We have much in common, including those more remote and rural populations, but Northern Ireland and Wales have their own identities, and I'm proud to be leading in bringing those to the fore. We aim to have the new external affairs roles up and running by the new year and recruiting at the moment, and we've already started to engage with organisations like Consumer Council Northern Ireland and FinTech Wales. We know from our work in Scotland that it will take time to build our networks. So if there's anyone out there today who wants to know more about the Devolved Nations work, please do reach out, get in touch. If you've networks you want to share or issues you want to raise, I'd be delighted to hear from you. We won't be taking FCA office space in Belfast or Cardiff, and we plan for these to be primarily home working roles. However, we'll cope. I think the pandemic has taught us a lot about Teams and Zoom, apart from anything else. We do, however, have plans for a new physical office in another UK city, and we're looking at Leeds at the moment. I guess you know that the Bank of England's own location strategy includes expansion of their presence in Leeds, and I'm currently engaging with my counterparts at the bank on this. Now, setting up a new office in an entirely new location is not something you can do quickly because we want to get it right, but we do aim to make significant progress on the project by the end of next year. We're not at final stage yet, but the initial plan is for 100 staff to be based in a new office, and we'll need to work out the focus of the roles and the precise numbers. We were very careful in our selection, and we know that Leeds and the surrounding area has a rich history in financial services and a wealth of talent we can draw on. But while setting up in Leeds, we're not going to forget about Scotland. We are planning to double the number of staff in the Edinburgh office to more than 200 over the next 2 years, so that's going to take up a lot of my time. At the moment, the majority of my Edinburgh-based colleagues work in direct supervision, mostly retail lending and consumer investment. Our new Executive Director for Authorisations, Emily Shepherd, who came in this year, came in to look after the all-important regulatory gateway. Nikhil has made it quite clear that the gateway is key. If you let in the wrong people into the system, it takes up time and risks savings livelihoods and health of consumers. So we're recruiting another 100 additional authorisations colleagues to make those key decisions at the outset, and I anticipate a number of these posts will be located in Edinburgh. Thinking of it from a slightly different angle for a minute, representing the UK as a whole is key to the FCA's approach, and reflecting the diverse population is vital. When we talk about diversity, we're not solely referring to race, gender and social background. We all need to think about this in the broadest sense, encompassing disability, sexual orientation and other dimensions such as social mobility. So we think about this from 3 lenses. As a regulator, we know diversity and inclusion underpin good culture in firms, so they're important features of how we evaluate firm culture and conduct. As an employer, we need to reflect the society we serve. Our work touches almost every UK resident's daily life and the lives of millions who rely on UK markets. We operate in an increasingly complex environment, and we need diverse teams capable of dealing with the challenges we face and the judgments that we need to make every single day. And as a public body, we must comply with the public sector equality duty as an employer and in our regulatory activity. And that means we have to look for ways to eliminate unlawful discrimination, advance equality of opportunity, and foster good relations between those people who share a protected characteristic and those who do not. And that means both within the FCA and in how we regulate. So what does that mean in practice? Well, it means we must continue to build diversity throughout the FCA itself and support a more diverse financial services sector. So to give you a few stats, 43% of our senior leadership team is female, and we're on track to meet the Women in Finance Charter target of 50% by 2025. 13% of our SLT identify as being from an ethnic minority, and we're working towards a target of 20% by 2025, of whom at least 4% will be Black. So my message is clear. Whether you're the regulator or a regulated firm, diversity matters. It is long past the point where people thought diversity was just some sort of fluffy add-on. Diversity of perspectives and thought result in better judgments and decision-making. It reduces the risk of groupthink and it can encourage innovation. Which leads me neatly on to our Innovate Division and the Innovation Hub. What they do is support new and established businesses to introduce innovative financial products and services to the market. More than 700 regulated and non-regulated firms have used our Innovate services, including the Regulatory Sandbox, Direct Support, and the Advice Unit. And the Regulatory Sandbox, I'm proud to say, has served as a blueprint for 44 different regulators globally. That Regulatory Sandbox is now in its 6th year. It's now open all year round, allowing firms to experiment. And it's supported all sorts of diverse, different initiatives. Distributed ledger technology to tokenized securities, digital ID solutions, and more than 20 open banking tests. As an organisation, we are working hard to accelerate our aim of becoming a data and digital first regulator. And to help us achieve this, we expect to be taking on many more data scientists and data analysts, actually a potential area for the new Leeds office I mentioned earlier, where there's a lot of that type of talent. We're also working closely with the Bank of England on the Transforming Data Collection initiative, with the goal of delivering regulatory reporting faster and at lower cost by standardising data and leveraging new technology at scale. Lots to watch in this space. And finally, it cannot have escaped anyone's notice that the UK is hosting the 26th UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties, COP26, in my home city of Glasgow. In years gone by, the links between financial services and climate change might not have been so easy to see, but it's clear that they're now at the forefront of people's minds. The FCA's Sustainable Finance Strategy is based on 3 themes, 3 T's: transparency, promoting good disclosure along the investment chain; trust, ensuring that the market delivers sustainable finance instruments and products that genuinely meet investors' sustainability preferences; and tools, government, regulators and industry all working together to share experience, develop guidance and tools, and provide mutual support as we address the huge challenges of climate change. And for those of you who need more, check out our feedback statement FS19/6. On top of this existing strategy, the Chancellor's remit letter to us in March 2021 stated that we should consider the government's commitment to achieve a net zero economy by 2050 in our work as a regulator. So that is it, thoroughly embedded. The Climate Financial Risk Forum, CFRF, is co-chaired by ourselves and the Prudential Regulatory Authority, and it seeks to build capacity and share best practice across financial regulators and industry to advance the sector's response to the financial risks from climate change. Ahead of COP26, the CFRF published guides to help the financial sector develop its approach to addressing climate-related financial risks and opportunities. These guides incorporate best practice, and they're written by industry, for industry, with a focus on risk management, scenario analysis, disclosure, innovation, and climate data and metrics. In a recent speech, Sheldon Mills, our Executive Director of Consumers and Competition, noted that climate change, like diversity and inclusion and other ESG issues, must, absolutely must, be a central part of how firms do business. This will increasingly form part of the FCA's supervisory engagement strategy, and that means that they will need to be embedded in the very culture of firms. So with stark warnings about climate change and its impact, this is an issue that affects every one of us in every nation of the UK and right across the world. We all need to be innovative and proactive in our approach and ensure this is embedded in all that we do as firms, regulators and individuals. And with that, I will say thank you for listening. I know I've tried to cover quite a lot there. I hope you found it interesting. I hope the rest of the conference goes well, and perhaps I might even see you all in person sometime. Thank you very much.